In one of China's greatest novels, there's a man who did everything right. He followed the rulers. He stayed loyal. He never caused trouble. And the system destroyed him anyway. His name is Lin Chong, and his story has been told for over 600 years because it keeps happening. Let's break it down.
He was the head martial arts instructor of the Northern Song Imperial Guard. Highly skilled, loyal to his duty, and never one to cause trouble. By every logic, he should have been the safest man inside the system. But it was precisely this most rule-abiding man who was pushed step by step by the very system he served into becoming an outlaw. His name was Lin Chong. His story comes from one of the four great classical novels of Chinese literature, Water Margin. Lin Chong was the kind of man you would trust in any era, in any society. Capable but never showy, talented but never looking for trouble, loyal to his friends, devoted to his family. He held the position of head instructor in the Imperial Guard in the capital, essentially the chief martial arts officer of the national military system, respectable status, steady income, a virtuous wife, a comfortable life. If the story stopped here, he would simply be a standard middle-class man inside the system, not chasing great wealth, just hoping for a peaceful life. But that was precisely where his tragedy began. One day, Lin Chong's wife went to a temple to burn incense. A rich young man harassed her on the spot. Lin Chong rushed over, raised his fist, is ready to strike. Then he recognized who it was, Gao Yanei, the adopted son of Grand Marshal Gao Ke. Lin Chong's fist went up, then slowly came back down. This single moment is the key to the entire story. It was not that he couldn't win the fight, it was that he didn't dare. Gao Q was the supreme commander of the entire military system. Striking his son meant declaring war on the entire power structure. Lin Chong chose to endure. He thought if he just bore it, it would pass. But his problem was not that he was too patient. It was that inside that system, patience was almost the only option he had. Gao Yanei did not give up, and Gao Q, to satisfy his son's obsession, began to engineer Lin Chong's destruction. They tricked Lin Chong into carrying his sword into the White Tiger Hall, a restricted military zone, then arrested him on charges of entering a classified area armed with intent to assassinate. The sword was real. The entry was real. All the evidence pointed at him. This was not an accidental injustice. It was a textbook exercise of power, using the rules themselves to manufacture a crime. In procedure, everything was lawful. In outcome, an innocent man was convicted. Lin Chong was sentenced to tattooing and exile, his face branded with the mark of a criminal, banished to a remote garrison. Overnight, the head instructor of the Imperial Guard.
And that was just the beginning. What came next was worse.
Became a convicted prisoner. But it did not end there. Gao Q had no intention of letting him reach the exile post alive. The escort guards had been paid off. Along the way, they poured boiling water over his feet, so he could barely walk. In the Wild Boar Forest, they prepared to kill him outright. Had his friend Lu Zishen not been secretly following and intervened just in time, Lin Chong would have died on that road. And after being saved, what was Lin Chong's reaction? He did not rage. He did not swear revenge. He urged Lu Zishen not to kill the two guards because he still clung to one last hope. Maybe if he behaved well at the exile post, he could still come back someday. Even at this point, he was still trying to stay on the system's track. This was not cowardice. It was the only way of surviving. That a man who had spent his whole life inside the system,
He kept enduring, he kept believing. The system would eventually let him live. Until one night, in the snow, he finally understood.
had ever known. At the exile post, Lin Chong was assigned to guard a supply depot. He did his job diligently, without complaint. Winter came. Heavy snow collapsed his shelter. He took refuge in a crumbling temple nearby. And on that snowy night, he overheard voices outside. Men sent by Zhao Q were setting fire to the supply depot, planning to burn him alive inside and report his death as a guard's negligence causing a fire. In that moment, Lin Chong finally understood. The problem was not that he had done something wrong. It was not that he hadn't endured enough. It was that the system had never intended to let him live. Behind the temple door, he gripped his spear, pushed the door open, and killed them. The instructor, who believed the rules would protect him, died on that snowy night. A man with nowhere left to turn, walked through the blood and into the storm toward Liangshan Marsh. Lin Chong's story has been told for over 600 years, not simply because it is a gripping tale, but because too many people have recognized a familiar pattern in it. A man who followed the rules and did his duty, who committed no obvious wrong, yet because he crossed paths with someone holding far greater power, was stripped of everything, step by step, his position, his reputation, his freedom, and nearly his life. Throughout the entire ordeal, the choice he made was the choice most people would make: endure, because he believed that as long as he stayed within the lines, the system would at least leave him a way out. But this story reveals a deeper truth. When power lacks checks and rules can be manipulated, endurance is no longer a strategy. It is merely a way of delaying the inevitable. In a different institutional environment, an affair like this might have turned out differently. If an independent judiciary existed, a case built on fabricated evidence might be reopened. If public opinion were not entirely controlled by those in power, the abuse of authority might face some restraint. But in the world Lin Chong inhabited, power, whatever it's in, judgment, all rested within the same structure. When that structure itself decided to destroy a man, there was almost no space left inside it to appeal. Water Margin has 108 outlaws, each with their own reason for joining the rebellion at Liangshan. But Lin Chong stands apart because he did nearly everything right. He followed the rules. He knew his place. He was willing to endure. On that snowy night at the mountain temple, what Lin Chong killed was not just the men who came to murder him. He killed his last remaining trust in the order he had lived by. This story endures not because it is extreme, but because it reveals a pattern that keeps repeating. When obedience is the only option, and obedience itself cannot guarantee safety, the tragedy is already written into the structure.